let's talk a little bit about probability. Probability of an event happening, it never changes, right? So the probability of whatever it is like the number of favorable outcomes divided by the number of total outcomes. If you have a really like complex event or like a compound thing that's going on, you've got to find out some different ways for figuring out like the favorable and the total numbers. Hi, I've been a math and science teacher for 20 years, and I'm here to make science and math more engaging and fun for everyone involved. For the helpers, for the students, for the teachers. If you have something that you're working on that's just not clicking in class, send me a comment so I can add it to the list for Thursday, or reach out. We can even do just a one-off tutoring session, okay? So check my rates, do all of that, click the link and do the stuff. So there are a couple of different things that you can do, like fundamental counting principle, where you're just multiplying the number of options together, right? But other things that you can do is you can just make a sample, right? Figuring out like your sample space. So your sample space, let's say we're just gonna roll, oh, dang it, I forgot to bring my giant bag of dice home. Shoot. Okay, but let's say we're gonna roll a D die. No, a D8. I don't like dealing with the zeros. All right, so a D8, all right? So all of my possible outcomes for this D8, that's my sample space, right? So 1, 2, I could roll a 3, I could roll a 4, I could roll a 5, I could roll a 6, I could roll a 7, I could roll an 8, okay? So those are all, that's my whole sample space, right? This is my total amount that like could happen, right? So let's say that I've got two things that I wanna keep track of, okay? Event A, I'm gonna say that event A is rolling a number that is less than 5. Why not? Okay, so rolling a number less than 5. So the only things that I could do, so my sample space with this little curly brace, right, is gonna be 1, 2, 3, and 4, because those are all my possible outcomes that are less than 5. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? It just says less than 5. It doesn't say less than or equal to. Okay. And then let's say that I've got event B, right? So I'm trying to kind of look at like how can these two events be related to each other, right? So let's say that B is an odd number. So my outcomes that would be an odd number are 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay. When we start talking about these different events, like kind of happening like at the same time, right? There we go. All right, so we've got two different types of kind of events or compound events that we can talk about, right? So this can be where it's like, what would happen if I got what could I get if I got a number that was less than 5 and an odd number, right? Or what would I have if I had a number less than 5 or an odd number, right? What are my possibilities? Because again, if we want to figure out our probability, for whatever, we've got to figure out, well, how many different ways can I get that favorable outcome and how many different ways can I get that total outcome, right? So in this case, if we were looking at like this symbol here that looks like a U, okay, that means union. So a union of two events is like or, okay? So we've got A or B. So in this case, it would be, all right, what are my outcomes? What's my sample space if I have a number less than 5 or it's an odd number? Okay, so it can be any of these values, right? It can be 1, 2, 3, or 4. It could be 1, 3, 5, 7. Yes, 1 occurs in both of them. I'm not going to list 1 twice because I get 1, yay, it meets both criteria, right? So I've got 1, I've got 2, I've got 3. Again, I'm only going to list it once. I've got 4, I've got 5, and I've got 7. So usually when I'm teaching this, I like to also show how this works on a Venn diagram, right? Because that helps you kind of visualize like, oh, it's the overlap or it's anything that's within either one of those circles or squares or however you show the Venn diagrams, right? So then that would be my number of outcomes for getting a number that's a number less than 5 or it's an odd number, right? Or it could be both, sure. So then if I were doing my probability, right, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my probability of getting A or B would be there's 6 favorable outcomes that I just listed right here out of 8 total outcomes. So that would be 3/4, which is 75%. So that's a union. That's where you're talking about like or. So it's a number less than 5 or an odd number. Now the other way that you can kind of relate these outcomes is this one. If you look at A and then it's like an upside down U or an N, B. Okay. So now I'm talking about my values that are both a number less than 5 and an odd number. That's an intersection. Okay, so you've got a number less than 5 and an odd number. So in that case, you're going to only look for the ones that are in both of these sets. So like 1 is in both of these, 3 is in both of these, and that's it. So my sample space for A and B is 1 and 3. So my probability for A and B is I've got 2 favorable outcomes, 2 ways to get that favorable outcome, and I still have 8 total, right? So it's 2 out of 8, which is 1/4, which is 25%, okay? So I have a 75% chance of rolling a number that is less than 5 or an odd number, and I have a 25% chance of rolling a number that is less than 5 and odd. That's MathedUp.